guys, and welcome to another episode in our Tribulation Soldier COMS YouTube and Facebook. I'm Pastor Stephen Birnie, and at the moment we are populating our Tribulation Soldier COMS YouTube channel with various videos, testimonies and so on, just to build up a real sort of online inventory, But at the moment I'm going through my personal testimony series, about where I came from and to where we are now, discussing things like depression, drinking, womanizing, drugs, all those things that were a part of my life for such a long time. But again, as always, want to show you guys, what God can actually do about some of these things. And last time we hit depression. This time around we're going to hit the drinking. So as always, guys, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit notifications. We're building up more and more videos on this, of course, with our Birnie Family YouTube. Our Birnie Family Fun for kids, we've been building that for some time now, they're pretty stuffed with good videos and stuff, so I hope you really enjoy that. Yeah, so it was depression the last time. The very first video we did was about my personal testimony. It was like an overview of where I came from when I came to God, and then obviously what happened afterwards. And now I'm picking bits out of that. And of course the big one was depression, the thing that can colour a person's life continually, day in, day out, and that's just what it's like, And you find with that, when you're an unhappy person, you're always trying to fill that void, and it's exhausting. It's really, really tiring, trying to even maintain a few hours of happiness, And of course the dreaded waking up the following day, and trying to enter that, it's not easy. But again, I don't want these to be depressing testimonies. I want to show you God can actually come into a person's life and really change it. Of course, being Scottish, back in the 80s and 90s, the Scottish stereotype of drinking was absolutely true. It's not so much now. People still like drinking and going out and stuff like that, but nothing like what it was. And when I grew up, alcoholism was a big thing. There was a lot of people in our immediate area you'd have called alcoholics. They drank on a daily basis, and that's just what they did, And of course I was brought up with it as well, just as natural as breathing air, that alcohol was around. And I think I tasted my first drink when I was like, 8 or something like that, just at New Year when having the New Year's parties. But of course I gave my life to the Lord when I was 9. I had quite a spectacular experience. But as the teenage years came in, I started falling away into the nightclubs and the drinking and just trying to fill those voids of how unhappy that actually was, Obviously drinking was a big thing. It started very early, very, very early indeed. And drunk, probably throughout high school, in a way, guys, with nothing else to do. There's nothing to do, absolutely nothing, So on Friday or Saturday nights, with friends had either stolen drink from their parents' house or something, and that was it. We simply had nothing else to do, And I'm pretty sure that if we did, then we might not have been drinking so much, But that is when the cycle really began, and that was it. And drinking for me as a teenager was actually so bad that I actually went into one of my exams. There was 8 exams and passed them, I don't know how, but I went into one of the exams drunk. I'd got a hold of this really high proof Russian vodka and drank that, and I was drunk, but I still passed. I never got a good grade, but I passed. That's just what it was like. And of course, as you get older, I was quite tall for my age, so I could get into the pubs when I was 14 or 15, and drank a lot. And then of course when the time came you left school and got a job, the clubbing really began, the real clubbing. And of course back then, you still get it now, it's all dance music. I always say it's one of the best eras of music, the 90s and early 2000s, There's dance music, there's bands, Oasis and Blur and all those indie bands and stuff like that, And it was just partying almost all the time, And again, for me, people could have looked upon me and said, oh, he's such a happy guy, he's got this, he's got that. I was really unhappy. And once the drink kicked in, spot on, that was it. And of course with the nightclubs came hand in hand with drugs and stuff, we'll get to that another day. But this was really who I was. So of course, again, being Scottish, guys, you kind of pride yourself on how much you can drink, and of course you take it to that pretty high level. And I was at the stage, we were drinking probably every Friday and Saturday night, clubbing. And I'd have to have like a half bottle of whiskey and a couple of beers before we even went out at like 9, half 9, you know. That's how what it was like. And even then I wasn't all that drunk, you know. And so from then on during the night, you know, it was pints, and Budweiser was always my favourite, you know, and if I felt I could just get some whiskies in there where we're going, you know, to keep going with the womanising, but womanising's another thing. And that's just what life was like for us. And I found that I was in this cycle of, you know, especially during the week, you know, we'd go into the local pubs, 4 pubs just stones throw from the house. You know, we'd go in there and have a jar, used to call it a jar, you know, a pint, and play darts, play pool. And, you know, it has to be said, you know, and again, I always say this about these testimonies, that it was the situation that was destroying my life, you know, not my friends. You know, I had some amazing friends and some amazing circles of friends, you know, and nothing lasts forever, you know, you move on. But it was never them, you know, it was never their fault or whatever. If anything, they helped, you know, they certainly helped me. Such good friends. But yeah, it was a Budweiser all the way, you know, that's just what I liked. And you guys that have drunk before will know what that's like. But it does slowly destroy your life a bit, you know, where it really, my life was centering itself around that, centering itself around the pubs and waiting for the weekend, and that was it. You know, I wasn't really interested in my career. I wasn't really interested in anything else, actually. You know, job was just a way to get money. I couldn't care less. It was just this constant place that I could go to that I felt happy, you know, and it was exciting, and I loved the smell. I loved the smell of the nightclubs, you know, the girls' perfume, you know, the women's perfume, and the beer and the drink and urine, beer nuts, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, that was just us, and it's amazing how that lifestyle can just become such a big part of your life. But of course, when I obviously started coming back to the Lord, and God really opens these things up, He shows you the issues that you may be having and the routes to them to sort them out. And you find that when you do give your life to Christ, there's things that actually just fall away from you. You've just had the big chocolate cake by meeting God, and drink and various other things can feel like M&Ms. It's just not enough anymore. You know, God's just came in like a initial drug. You know what I mean? And that's what it was like for me with the drink. You know, again, like I said in the other videos, God sometimes chooses to just heal you straight away, just falls away. And other times it can take time, you know. God has to sometimes wean you from the old life into that new life, and that takes time. You know, you might still have issues with drink and womanising as a Christian, of course you do. God's got to deal with these things, and you know, that can take time. But for me, I found out I was actually called when I was 8 years old. I had a prophecy over my life when I was 8, but in 2002 we were given this prophecy that we'd be doing this, you know, we'd be preaching and teaching, me and Sharon, our family. And I was still drinking then. I mean, I'm talking 3 or 4 beers. No, absolutely, that's just water. That was like water to me, you know. 3 or 4 beers and stuff like that. And I remember being away for the weekend with Sharon, visiting family, and I bought this 6-pack of Bud, and you know, we're sitting chatting, and it was fine. It wasn't drunk or anything. And I remember that night being up the stairs, and I was praying, and I knew in my heart that God just didn't want me to drink at all, you know, that just to abstain from it completely. And again, total abstinence of alcohol is not the Christian way. There's a whole other teaching on that we'll get to another day, you know. But I was going to be called to the ministry. And of course, because my life beforehand had been just full of lies and nonsense and rot and stuff like that, you know, I really wanted the real thing, you know, to be called properly, to be trained properly, to be preaching truth all the time, you know. And drink really wasn't a part of that. And it just fell away. I was so amazed, you know, how some things can be really stubborn, like a real chain, and other things just drift away, and that was it. You know, there wasn't a specific day that I stopped or anything like that, even though I'd been drinking solid for probably 8 years before that. And here I was, pretty much healed from alcoholism, you know. And of course at the time, yeah, it's a little bit different when you're called to the ministry, because you are called to abstain. And But you know, the reason for that is because you are going to be speaking to people. You're going to be looking after people who do have alcohol problems. And it's not very good if you're sitting at home swigging away the beers. So I don't miss it really at all. I mean, they're funny, there was one moment when we were in a caravan holiday in Aviemore, which is in the Scottish Highlands, and we'd ordered this takeaway pizza, so I drove into town to go and get it myself, and came into the pub, and there was the pizza, it was beautiful pizza, and there was nobody at the pub, but there was this glass lager, and it was a hot day, and it had a beautiful white head on it. It was up in a tall glass, and there was condensation running down it, and I looked at it and thought, oh, wow, that would be thirst quench, lovely hot day pizza, a bit of beer, you know. But this is what God does. It's not that you have this horrible temptation to try and get past, and it's so difficult. It's like, whew, that was tempting. We can be tempted by those things as Christians, there's no question about it. Sometimes even fall a little bit. But the power is gone. That's what God does. He takes the power of that addiction or whatever that may be, and he takes it away. And see in your life when you have that taken away from you, it's like you've got an empty hole now. You know, it's just this strange feeling of actually feeling a little bit empty. This thing that was destroying your life was still a crutch. It's still something you loved, and that was it gone. You know, and that's what it was like for me when it came to the alcohol. I'd been drinking so steadily for so long that I didn't really know anything else. You know, I wouldn't have said I was a full-blown alcoholic, like a daily thing. You know, where you're really sweating for it. Mine was a bit more of like a grade 3, you know, where I had to have it on weekends, you know, I had to have a beer at nights, that was that kind of level. Didn't need it all the time though. So maybe that's one of the reasons why it kind of fell away so quickly. But there's many people who do have major problems with alcohol. It is a bandage. It can make you forget. Yeah, the next day you're in trouble, you know, when it comes to the hangover, but even if you suffer from depression just for that time, it's great to have that release from it. There's no question. And the thing about a lot of people misunderstand about God is that he understands that. You know, he's not fire and brimstone and chucking the Bibles from heaven to hit you in the head or with thunderbolts about drinking. That's just not the way he does things. He understands why. And in many cases when it comes to God dealing with things in our own life, it takes time. He's got to show you that he loves you despite that. That you having that alcohol problem isn't a problem to him. He still loves you, and he'll deal with that for you. And that'll just take that little bit of time. If anything from these testimonies, guys, I just hope you see that it's a very, very different God to what you maybe think he is, you know. He is amazing. He is amazing. And I'm not a liberal Christian or a religious Christian or anything like that. I'm just a Christian. I want the real thing, and that's it. You know, whatever that may be, whether it feels good or whether it feels bad, I want the truth, you know. And this is what I'm sharing with you, the true mind of God. Do you honestly think God would browbeat you? God would hit you over the head because you've got a drinking problem? When he understands the root, he knows why you do it. He understands and he loves you. He's a great father, guys. I'll tell you, Jesus Christ, your best friend. There's no question about it. Yeah, so that was basically my testimony of alcoholism. And of course, it's the same with the drink, you know, again, when you're a pastor, I know I keep having to say this just to give you a bit of context, that, you know, you really are ministering and trying to look after people who are going through that, where they're coming away from the drink, whether they've been healed from the drink. I've seen people instantaneously healed from drink. They just suddenly woke up one day and just don't need it anymore. That's it, you know, God's dealt with it. But for some people, it's a process, you know, and God does like taking us through their various things. He wants us to grow as Christians. That's what he's really wanting to see, and that's what he's wanting to do. And if life's rosy all the time, there's not a lot to learn, really, is there? You know. So this is why he does things the way that he does things. So yeah, guys, there you go. That's the testimony about alcohol, and I'm sure so many of you guys can relate to this. It's not a unique sermon, you know. It's not at all. It's not unique, but what God can actually do about it. I've seen so many people healed. I've seen so many people just fall away. It's really awesome not to have that addiction. So I'm going to have quite a few more testimonies in this little series that we're doing. Really important, very, very important that, you know, anyone who's listening, you know, knows where I come from, knows where Sharon comes from, our family, what we've been through, you know, what God's done for us. Very, very important. And of course, the life that you maybe see on our Birnie Family channel, and of course the Birnie Family Fun channels, are a result of God changing our lives. There's just nothing else about it, you know. And as I always like to say about Birnie Family and, you know, our Birnie Family channels on YouTube, is that at the moment, yeah, it does paint us in a bit of a light, you know. It does look like we're just having fun all the time and all that, and that's just not the case. Me and Sharon do fall out. Hey, you know, the kids can be a bit of a handful now and again, you know. But generally what you see is what you get. You know, it's that's the kind of life God can give you if you follow him, that is, you know. I'm really hoping in time with the Birnie Family stuff, you know, that especially if, you know, sort of move on and progress even further, that you'll just see more and more of our lives as in the bad parts too, you know. The times when I'm having a moment or I'm having a time, you know, these things happen. And you can't live with the same woman for 20 years and not fall out every now and again, I'll tell you. And same with the kids, they can really test your patience. And of course, the same with the dog. Bailey, goodness me. You know, it's not a huge bed of roses, but it's infinitely better than what it was before, or what it could have been if God had left me on that path. So as always, guys, you know, the YouTuber saying, you know, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe and hit notifications. You know, that'll really support us and really help us build this online ministry that we're building at the moment. But all these videos, guys, are done for you. You know, I just hope you really enjoy. That's what we're really trying to put out there, you know, especially when it comes to this, the preaching and teaching, that God can change your life. So God bless, guys, and thanks so much for watching.